Yo, what up gamers, I'm Arc, and welcome to my 12.10 ADC tier list. Tier list is right here, you can see. Looks a little bit different from the previous patch. It doesn't look too different, but obviously the S tier looking a lot different now. Well, I mean, we already had Vayne and S tier in the previous patch. I was actually going to remove it though once I shook up my tier list, but I didn't want to shake up my tier list like right before this patch anyway. Like when everything's going to get shaken up either way, so... Yeah, she was going to be out, but now she's back in. So is Kog'Maw. Been a while since he was lost in S tier, but here he is. Obviously, game is a lot different now this patch than it was last patch. I don't know if you guys have played on the durability update yet. Feels amazing though as an ADC, man. Let me just say, having the time of my life, man. Holy shit, I've not had this much fun in League of Legends in so long, man. But so the interesting thing here is just going to be going over exactly how these changes impacted all of these ADCs. So I went through the win rates of every ADC and just tracked exactly how their win rate changed in regards to the changes that happened this patch. So I'm just going to go over that with you guys, if you don't mind. I didn't end up adding Akshan. All right. Oh, this isn't even early. Well, yeah, it's early-ish. This is like 1 day into the patch, how everything has changed. I also tracked it like about 8 hours into the patch, but there was a lot of things that are now looking a lot different. So I'm glad I waited about a day before putting out this tier list, because I would have had some wrong conclusions, I think, if I had made the tier list on the day of the patch. Anyway, Kaisa's win rate was pretty much unchanged. It was like less than 0.1% change. So, you know, if you like Kaisa, well, it's not good news or bad news. Ezreal's win rate down, however, by 0.5%. I did note that Eclipse win rate seemed to be up, but the sample size was not really conclusive, so... I did try out Eclipse Ezreal before I even saw that the win rate was up, because I was like, you know what? I mean, lethality may be nerfed, but percentage armor pen should be fine, and I don't think Eclipse had that nerfed. And also the percentage max health passive that it has on it also should be buffed again, so... Yeah, Eclipse might just have gone through an indirect buff this patch compared to all the other lethality items, but... I might be wrong, maybe they did nerf it, but I didn't notice it. Anyway, potentially Eclipse Ezreal might be quite decent, but we'll see. Lucian, however, down by 0.2%. That's not that much. He doesn't mind too much. Jhin, unchanged, pretty much had no win rate change. Misfortune, win rate up by 0.4%, and interestingly enough, both builds are up. And like I said, unclear which benefited more. So both are up by about the same amount. Because the sample size is split between both builds, it could be that one build will go up a little bit more than the other later on in the patch, but we'll have to wait and see. But one general trend is that, you know, I expected lethality to be a little bit nerfed compared to other builds this patch, but I didn't notice it as much with Eclipse. I didn't actually think about that until now, but yeah, I'm guessing Eclipse wasn't really hit as hard by lethality nerfs. I guess the only really bad thing about Eclipse builds is that you tend to follow them up with more lethality, and lethality itself does seem to be a little bit nerfed, but clearly not by that much. Just because, you know, Misfortune is up, even on her lethality build, and I don't think she's the only one. Samira down by 2.2%, so she is hit massively by this nerf. These changes. Why is that? Well, there's two main reasons that I can think of. So shield bow seems to have been massively nerfed all across the board. I think Vayne is the only champion whose win rate is now higher with shield bow than it used to. No. So there's a couple of champions whose win rate with shield bow is higher than it used to be on the previous patch, but I think Vayne is the only one that has shield bow as her highest win rate. Even the ADCs that have a higher win rate on shield bow now than they did before, their other mythics went up in win rate even more, and they're now a higher win rate than shield bow. So I'm thinking of Ashe when I say that, for example. But yeah, so obviously if shield bow is just massively weaker this patch for whatever reason, I think it got the shield nerfed, right? And I guess with a lot of durability in the game, you need to build less durability because you're going to survive anyway. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why shield bow may have been nerfed, but it does seem to have been massively nerfed. So that hurts Samira because it's really her only good option. And then there's also the fact that, you know, every champion is much more durable now, so when she goes in and unleashes her combo, it's really fucking awkward if they're just still alive at the end of the combo, isn't it? Because she just has nothing left after that, does she? She's really reliant on, like, you know, getting those resets, jumping in, just bursting down everybody, and if they Addition bursts everybody, but none of them fucking die. Well, that's, you know, it's not great for her. No reset, no kill. She gets blown up. And then Kate, yep, literally identical win rate, by the way. Not even the slightest 0.01% change. Just completely identical for now. Might change. Probably will change. But just funny. Meanwhile, Ash's win rate up by 0.3%. And this would be up even higher if people would be building more Kraken Slayer and Guild Force, which I'm thinking they will start doing eventually. Because people eventually should notice that, Shield Bow is just not cutting it anymore. And her win rate with Kraken Slayer and Guild Force is actually quite high right now. Really good. So, I'm probably actually quite underrating her on the tier list as well, because I've never really gone as in-depth looking into builds and saying, oh, this champion should be higher than their win rate actually is, because people are building them wrong. This build is actually really good. I'm going to tell people to build this and that, then rank them appropriately. I don't really have time to do that for every single champion compared to all the work that I've already done. So the tier list will get more refined in future patches as I start to do that work for every champion. But yeah, for now, just giving you like a general idea of the state of the tier list for ADC in this patch. Jinx up by 0.8%. Again, oh, actually, that's another thing. Kraken Slayer in general just does seem to be slightly more buffed in general than Guild Force. Guild Force did not get like massively nerfed like Shield Bow did, but there does seem to be more value in Kraken Slayer now than there used to be for most champions who had the option of a Guild Force or Kraken Slayer. Jinx is one of those, so her win rate increase would be even higher with Kraken Slayer. But yeah, that's an obvious one. Being an immobile ADC, and one of the main ways that they nerfed her to take her out of the meta was nerfing her tankiness. So her being tanky gonna be really nice for her. Tristana down by 0.3%. Now this one is actually really interesting to me because a lot of people, especially like Tristana mains in particular, were kind of doom and gloomy about this for Tristana because they were like, oh, but Tristana wants to one-shot people. Tristana needs to like jump in and just one-shot that person. If they don't die, then that's really crap for her. And to an extent, they're right. But one thing that people were overlooking that I realized shortly before the patch was, you know what? Tristana actually loves durability though. Not on her enemies, obviously, but she loves it on herself. If you remember when she got nerfed, like buffed sometime this season, they gave her like 40 flat HP. And I was like, I've seen this buff on other champions and other ADCs. It's not going to be that big a deal. It'll be a slight buff. I know win rate just shot up by like over 1%. And that was the moment that I thought like, you know what? Actually, you know, Tristana does really appreciate the tankiness more than other ADCs because when she's jumping into melee range, she's kind of vulnerable, isn't she? So she loves being tanky. Obviously, she doesn't like the opponents being tanky. And that's something that's outweighing her love of being tanky. But at the same time, it's also very much compensating for it. So she is seeing a decrease, but it's not that massive. Tristana is actually still solid, still A tier. So still a good patch to be a Tristana main, just slightly worse than the previous patch, but that's fine. Vayne, to the shock of no one, up by 2.4%. I think she saw a bigger increase than Kog'Maw did. Yeah, she did. But Kog'Maw was already a higher win rate ADC to begin with, so his win rate is still a little bit higher. But they're both about the same. I think they're like 0.3% win rate apart right now, and that could change. Vayne could go higher. Kog'Maw could stay higher. Who knows? But they're both like very clearly S tier. No other ADC is even close to those two, right? But yeah, obviously Vayne does a lot of true damage. She doesn't really it's true damage based on the percentage of the enemy's health, not even flat true damage. So to an extent, she doesn't even care how tanky her opponent is. Like if you've ever seen her melt like a fucking full tank Sejuani in like 2 seconds, you know, Vayne doesn't really care how tanky her opponent is. They're gonna die anyway in no time whatsoever. So really obvious that she would be the highest beneficiary of every champion getting tankier because it affects her much less than it affects anyone else. Twitch, meanwhile, down by 0.2%. He's a lot less reliant on like one-shotting people or bursting people, assassinating people to be useful than, you know, like Tristana or Samira. But, you know, he is a sort of assassin ADC hybrid, so it does affect him a little bit that everybody's tankier now and hard to kill. But, you know, a lot of his purpose is just DPS. He does a lot of DPS in general when he uses his ultimate. He does a lot of AoE damage. And that's the most important thing. It's not necessarily about the 1v1 assassinations. It's just the general, like, hypercarry AoE ADC. That's his main role, more than it is being an assassin. So he wasn't hit too hard, but it is a small hit. That being said, this could easily change. It could go down even further, or it could stay about the same. Who knows, but it doesn't seem like he was impacted massively. Draven down by 1.6%. But weirdly, his Kraken Slayer win rate went up. It's not by enough of a sample size for me to say, you know, Kraken Slayer Draven is actually better now, but it was weird. It was very not in trend with everything else. But yeah, his Eclipse build went down. His Shield Bow win rate went massively down, as we said. So why is that? Well, obviously the Shield Bow being massively nerfed, it also affects Draven, with it being a core build on his crit build. Core item on his crit build. And I think with everybody being tankier, it makes killing people a lot harder. There's just a lot less kills in the game. And obviously Draven is so reliant on getting kills for cashing out his passive. It just seems like it's making it much harder for him to get that cash out in the average game. And yeah, that's just hurting him. Because even with the non-shield bow win rate, his non-shield bow builds, his win rate is still down. But yeah, I mean, like I said, his Kraken Slayer win rate is weirdly up. I don't know what's up with that. I think it might just be because of the low sample size, but it was like 2,000 games. You know, it's not that bad of a sample size. We'll see what's going on later on in the patch. Zion win rate up by 0.2%, and funnily enough, both the Gale Force build and the Lethality build are down by 0.5%. Only Kraken Slayer's win rate is up, and it's up by such a massive amount that even though it's the least popular mythic out of the three, it's still actually making her win rate go up very slightly. So that's kind of funny. Sivir win rate down by 0.8%, but the crit build win rates were completely unchanged. So Sivir already had a higher win rate with crit builds on the previous patch than with lethality builds. And so far it's looking like crit Sivir just doesn't really care at all about the changes, but lethality Sivir does. So it's just making the difference even bigger. Crit Sivir is now like massively ahead of lethality Sivir in win rate. Aphelios' win rate down by 0.2%. You would think like Jinx, he would also really benefit a lot as an immobile hyper carry to be a lot tankier, a lot harder to take down. What exactly is causing this? Well, to an extent, definitely the shield bow nerf, because it's not exactly his core item anymore, but there's still a lot of Aphelios players building shield bow, so he's probably hurt a little by that. And, you know, that's as easy as cutting shield bow out of your build, just to get rid of that. But there's probably also the fact that the best Aphelios skilling order is to max lethality second, and even on this patch that's true, but lethality as a whole has been nerfed since armor is higher now. You're gonna get like a lot less close to true damage than you could before, and so that's just slightly impacting his damage relative to other ADCs. But like on the whole, like there's a very slight decrease, and honestly, if you just cut shield bow out of your build entirely, or if you were just never building it to begin with, you probably just see yourself unchanged in performance this patch on Aphelios, or maybe even slightly higher. Meanwhile, yeah, Kog'Maw's win rate up by 1.4%, so he doesn't benefit from this quite as much as Vayne. He does benefit from everybody getting higher HP, because he also does percentage HP damage, but he does it as magic damage instead of true damage. And MR across the board went up this patch, so that does hurt him, but obviously doesn't get outweighed anywhere near by the fact that he does percent HP damage, and everybody's HP went massively up. So Kog'Maw, his damage output was definitely affected less than the average champion's damage output this patch, and so that puts him solidly with Vayne in S tier. I mean, well, Varus up by 1.2%, which is a pretty big increase. I think some people were expecting him to go up, but I wasn't expecting it to go up that much. That's actually crazy that he went up almost as much as Kog'Maw, since his percentage HP damage is actually a little bit less, or quite a bit less than Kog'Maw's. But yeah, crit build performing way better. Though both builds seem to be up. I don't think the Duskblade lethality build was up, but almost nobody was doing that anyway. Eclipse is also up in win rate. But like I said, both builds are the data is inconclusive. What we can be sure about is that his win rate this patch will definitely be up. Thing is, the sample size is split between both builds, crit and Eclipse, so it's kind of hard to say to what extent which build benefited more. Could be that Eclipse will start to go down later and the crit win rate will go up even more. But it's pretty safe to say that at least Varus benefited from these changes, even though which build might be better is a little bit inclusive. Although I should say, when I say both builds went up by about the same, crit build already had a higher win rate on the previous patch, so it is still the best win rate on this patch. And it's what people are doing the most of anyway, so it's the sample size that's more likely to be accurate. But yeah, either way, if you're a fan of Varus, you're gonna be a fan of this patch. Kalista down by 1.1%. The main reason I can think of is just shield bow being trashed this patch. She has no other option. So that's gonna massively impact her. If there's anything else, like maybe every champion being tankier makes it a lot harder for her to burst people with her E like she wants to. I don't know, it doesn't sound like right to me. I think this is mostly just the shield bow nerf. Because I think if anything, the fact that she's more durable gives her more time to stack her E. That should benefit her. But yeah, I think it's mostly down to shield bow nerf. Meanwhile, Zeri up by 1.8%. Both builds up significantly. So we're talking about crit with shield bow, and we're talking about bruiser with Triforce. Funnily enough, Kraken Slayer might actually now be her highest win rate. I think at least, you know, at the time of saying this, it might go down. But the Kraken Slayer win rate went up by like 3%. It was actually crazy. Still not a solid sample size behind that though. But yeah, with shield bow being like, it does stylistically benefit crit Zeri, right? But shield bow got nerfed massively, so it does kind of make sense that Kraken Slayer would go up. Whether it actually went up as much as it looks like it did, yet to be seen. We'll see. Unfortunately, Zeri was so fucking terrible that 1.8% increase, which is massive, still leaves her trash. But you know, at least she's significantly less trash now. Still the worst possible tier, but you know, at least she's got a higher win rate than Aphelios now. Meanwhile, Senna up by 1.5%. Both builds up significantly. So that's Eclipse build, Lethality build, and Kraken Slayer build. Obviously, this is a very low sample size champion, and both builds are like splitting the sample size as well. So it's hard to tell which build would be better, which build benefited more. Probably Lethality will be better. I'm like 99% sure about that. But to what extent each build benefited, it's hard to say. That being said, I'm pretty certain that these changes hard benefited Senna. Even on support, her win rate went massively up. She's not S tier, but she is really, really solid. So I think previously I had her somewhere in B tier because she was decent. Like, people are really underrating her. She was still decent, even on last patch. But now this patch, I'm actually putting her in A tier because it seems like she's really loving this patch. She is actually one of the ADCs that was like I think she was maybe the squishiest ADC. I'm not sure, but yeah, definitely really benefits from all the changes. And because she has an inbuilt heal, she benefits more from the armor increase that every ADC has gotten. So that's another thing. But yeah, that's about the win rate change for every single ADC. And then things that I wanted to note. I only wrote down the thing about shield bow universally hard underperforming. Aside from that, yeah, I forgot to mention it, but yeah, Kraken Slayer slightly better than Gale Force compared to how you'd expect compared to previous patches. It's not necessarily that every champion has a higher win rate on Kraken Slayer than Gale Force, but whatever the win rate difference between them in the previous patch, it's now like slightly more in favor for Kraken Slayer than it was in the previous patch, even if Gale Force might still be higher, you know? Was there anything else? I mean, another thing worthy of note, Eclipse win rate mostly unchanged, I guess, or maybe even went higher. And that's, you know, a general trend for most champions that would build that, like Ezreal had it as an option, seems to be going up. That's inconclusive, though. For the most part, this is inconclusive. Because, like, almost every champion that was building Eclipse, they now have crit as their higher win rate build, because more people are building crit, because they're like, oh, these changes are going to benefit crit, you know? It seems like Eclipse wasn't really changed that much, though, but, you know, it's hard to say, because people are mostly abandoning it. So, the sample size is not amazing for every champion, but it does seem to be a trend that for every champion is mostly unchanged. So I do feel confident that it's actually not that bad considering it's a lethality mythic. But yeah, I think that's about everything I wanted to cover. So I'm just gonna end the video here. There will be, you know, more developments obviously that come with this patch that I'll cover in future tier lists. There's also gonna be a balance update. I think they said in 2 days after the patch, so that should be probably tomorrow. If there's a significant change to the tier list, I will just straight up release another tier list to update you guys, and maybe we'll cover some more intricacies about builds on that tier list. But yeah, we'll see. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more of this kind, and I will see you guys in the next video. Later, gamers.